Hello Perception Trainers people, and welcome back to another video. So in this video, we're going to be talking about shame, hopelessness, and anger. And specifically about the very common spiral that most people get into when they're on a healing path, which keeps them trapped in between hopelessness and anger. And also a lot of the time when people are kind of trapped in this place of being hopeless or angry when they really tap into their true emotional state, they will also be doing a lot of spiritual bypassing and distracting themselves and making themselves feel like they're in a different place by doing a lot of practices or a lot of sessions or a lot of focusing on the positive or trying to kind of just not think about how you are. But really when you kind of get to it deep down, you either feel like hopeless, like life isn't actually ever going to get better. You're jumping from thing to thing and practice to practice and experience to experience and hope to hope to hope, and this is going to change my life and this is going to change my life and this new job and this new relationship and this new place that I'm traveling to and whatever. But that you constantly seem to find yourself back in this place of just hopelessness. Like, you try all of these things and you do all these things and it feels like it's working and you feel like you're healing and you feel like you're changing, and then all of a sudden you're back in your depression, you're back in your anxiety, you're back in your just life sucks and I'm never going to figure it out and nothing's getting any better and every new thing that I do just leads me back to this place of just hopelessness. Or you find yourself getting into states where you feel genuine rage. You feel genuine anger. You're going along your spiritual path and you're having these revelations and you're letting yourself grieve and you're sad and you're emotional and you're all these things. And then you get to this anger place and it really scares you. And you want to rush to forgiveness. You want to rush to joy. You want to rush to enlightenment. You want to rush to understanding the other person. You want to rush to compassion for everybody. You want to rush to being the bigger person, to being the good spiritual person. And instead of that, you also wind up feeling hopeless. You get more and more depressed. You get more and more, in order to suppress your anger, in order to get rid of your anger, in order to be the bigger person, you can either kind of white knuckle your way through it and you start to, like I say, be the people pleaser. You're always the bigger person. You're always understanding. You're always compassionate towards the other person. But this seems to then lead you into states of deeper and deeper needing to protect yourself, needing to cope, needing to scapegoat, needing to numb, needing to distract yourself. You're more and more and more feeling like you need to create this buffer between yourself and reality, as you're this people pleaser who's not acting in your anger, but is acting in what you think is the spiritual way to be, the more mature way to be, right? So you're doing that, and you're kind of feeling like every time that anger comes up and every time you feel that distress and every time you feel like you want to get mad or this isn't fair or you should be better than this or whatever, again, you jump to this higher perspective and you can kind of act it out. But then there's these negative repercussions that you maybe aren't linking to this anger. You're not linking to this behavior, but then later that day you need to binge, or later that day you have a whole big food drama, or later that day you drink, or later that day you end up having to zone out in front of Netflix for 2 hours, or you kind of do this whole week of being the bigger person, and then on the weekend you go on a bender and you lose yourself and you have no idea why you needed to do all of this stuff to just numb out and zone out or take care of yourself, essentially. Or, again, you feel that anger and you just stuff it down, I don't want to be angry, and then that kicks you back down into hopelessness. So what I want to explain to you in this video today is what's happening to you, why there's this cycle of hopelessness, anger, back to hopelessness, or hopelessness, anger, jumping to people pleasing, jumping to the higher ideal, and then therefore a lot of coping, a lot of self-sabotage, a lot of I don't know why I'm putting on this barrier between myself and the world. I'm constantly needing, like in my physical reality, I'm I'm feeling this sense in some way or some form or some shape, like I'm needing to put up these walls, this protection around me in some way. Emotional protection, physical protection, spiritual protection. I'm putting up these walls of protection all around myself as I abandon myself to try to do the bigger thing. And we need to look at this for how this really is, okay? So the first thing to understand is that when we're waking up, when we're facing our childhood traumas, when we're spiritually evolving, when we're growing up in any way, and these are all different terms for the same thing. I just want you to understand this, okay? Spiritual enlightenment and growing up are the exact same thing. Maturing into an actual human adult, and what that actually means, so not what most people are doing, who are children acting like adults. Yes, we have fancy cars, we have jobs, we have money, we have relationships. It all looks great on Instagram. But on the inside, we're terrified 6-year-olds who are causing chaos in our lives and in the lives of everybody else. We're not adults. That's not adulthood. Okay, so again, when we look out at the world and we say, well, I don't want to be like everybody else and I don't want to grow up because being an adult sucks. It's like, yes, kid, they're not adults. People out there, most people are not adults. They have not healed. They have not grown. They have not transformed from child into adult. They've gone from child to traumatized child in an adult body. And we're all living as traumatized children in our adult bodies. And this is why the spiritual awakening path and you discovering yourself makes you so weird. And you start to discover all of these things and you see all this stuff about yourself and you see all this stuff about how the world works and how the system is just so broken and there must be like a big conspiracy behind it because it's so awful and it's so against human nature and it's all these things. And again, it's not a conspiracy. It's the people running the program are traumatized children. The people running society are deeply, deeply traumatized children who don't know how reality works and who are working from fear and trauma. And hurt people. Scared people are scared, right? So the big corporations, the big people at the top are scared children who are operating outside of the laws of reality because they don't know how reality works. They're living a nightmare and they're projecting it everywhere. And we are all living this nightmare, okay? So the awakening path, that's what this is. So if you're healing your childhood trauma, if you're going on a spiritual journey, if you're trying to heal your physical body, if you're doing any of these things that are tuning you and tapping you into your emotional state, and you're starting to have to, so yes, we live very near an airport, so if you hear planes flying overhead, I apologize for that, but that's what it's going to be for the next couple of videos until we move again. If you're just feeling this sense of you're doing this path and you're walking any kind of awakening path, you're going to come up against anger. You're going to come up against hopelessness. And these things happen for a good reason. Okay? So let's back up to why these things happen so you can understand the spiral that you're in and so that you can understand how to move yourself through it. Okay? So again, if we go back to the hierarchy of emotions, the vibrational scale that's in power versus force. So this vibrational scale that you can find in Power versus Force, but you can also just look it up on the internet. There's a million photos of it down there. You're going to see that at the very, very bottom, okay, is victim mentality. And we need to understand that as children, and again, if you've watched any of my past videos since I come back to YouTube, we have to understand and contextualize and conceptualize what childhood is actually like for us as a human race right now. Okay? Again, we are living in a world that is being run right now by traumatized children in adult bodies. We are not living in a world where we are seeing true adults having true understanding of how real reality works and therefore can teach children properly how to live a life. We have traumatized adult children who have no idea what's going on, who are living from their trauma, passing down what they were taught by their parents who were traumatized, by their parents who were traumatized, by their parents who were traumatized, living in a world where everybody's traumatized, saying this is how reality works. So we need to understand that from 0 to 7, we're mentally in a state where we're in a trance. We're being programmed to understand how reality works. And for every other species where the animals don't have the higher reasoning brains that we have, so don't have the capacity to paint a picture on top of reality that doesn't exist. Okay, so this is what we need to understand about the human mind. We have the capacity to paint a picture on top of reality that doesn't exist. This is what makes us powerful creators. This is what gives us the capacity to create things that don't already exist. That's a magical tool. That's amazing. Okay, but the problem is when we paint stories on top of reality that don't exist that counteract real reality. So a true conscious creator, what is a true conscious creator? Somebody who understands how real reality works and is wanting to create something within it. So like I always give the example of the airplane. The Wright brothers understood aerodynamics, they understood gravity, they understood what flight looked like in winged creatures, and they created an airplane within the laws of reality. They didn't jump off a cliff and try and flap their arms and fly. You see what I'm saying here? They didn't say, I'm a human, I want to fly, here's how I think it should happen, I'm going to jump off a cliff and flap my arms just like a bird, and then I'm going to fly, and then they fell to the ground and went, oh, reality's against me. Or, oh, reality went wrong, I'm just going to keep jumping off a cliff over and over and over again expecting to fly. No. They said, okay, what are the laws of actual reality that actually exist, the structure and nature of reality? So again, we live in a world, we live in a reality, this life that we're living on Earth has rules, the universal principles. There is structure to the experience we are having. Is this the ultimate structure? Is this how all of creation is? Is this how all of existence is? Is this how all of consciousness is? Probably not. But it's how this is. These are the laws of the universe, of the life that we're living. The human life on human earth that we are living in. It is our relative experience that we are learning from. So let's just embrace that. There's a structure. Now, when you want to create something that doesn't already exist, to be a conscious creator means that you say, okay, I'm going to discover what the structure is and then create what I want to create within the structure. Airplane. I'm not going to be a fool who jumps off a cliff and then says, okay, well, human flight just can't happen. I did what I thought, right? I painted my reality on top of reality. I went from my current understanding, a bird can just fly, so I should be able to just fly. I jumped off the cliff, it didn't work, guess flight can't happen. Or the other side being, I'm just going to keep doing it. I'm right. I know that when I'm right, I can make sense of it in my head. I have all these reasons why I should be able to jump off a cliff and fly. So I'm just going to keep doing it over and over and over again and demand that reality give me what I want. And it doesn't, ever, because reality doesn't change for us. The Wright brothers said, reality's not going to change for us, but we can build something within reality that aligns with what we want. So that is a conscious creator. What most of us are operating again from these fundamental assumptions about how reality is, what is right and wrong, what we have to do for survival, what is good and bad, right and wrong, all these judgments that come from a fundamental misunderstanding of how to survive in the reality that we live in. It's a traumatized humanity, a humanity that evolved out of animal consciousness into this human consciousness that we have, and we're like, holy fucking shit, we have no idea how this works. We all of a sudden became aware of all this stuff that we don't actually understand. So we have all this capacity but we don't actually know how it works. That's basically, we can think of ourselves as kind of like in the movie Avatar. We are these very basic beings in this very complex world, and we don't know how we work. We're in a machine that's incredibly complex, within a machine that's incredibly complex, and we don't understand how it works. So it's the same thing as like when we are working with a computer we don't understand. We might have a desire to create the color yellow, and we think that if I type these 3 keys, it's going to make my screen yellow, and instead it opens Skype. And then you think, oh, the computer did something wrong. And the actual reality is, no, the computer didn't do anything wrong. That's how the computer works. You just don't know how it works. You put the command keys, expected that it was going to give you a yellow screen, but the command keys that you did in real reality are the ones that create Skype to pop up. So you need to figure out what the actual keystrokes are to create the yellow screen. Because you can make the screen yellow, it's just the keystrokes that you use don't do that. The computer didn't do anything wrong. You don't know how it functions. So this is what trauma is. We are all, as humans, wanting to create, wanting to do, wanting to express, wanting to live without understanding how reality works. So we're doing all these keystrokes, expecting this result, and then we're getting that result, and then we're either telling ourselves, well, then that means that I can't have what I want, it's not possible. Or, reality's against me, I'm cursed, I can't have this, blah, blah, blah. Or, no, I'm right, I'm going to keep doing this, and eventually it's going to work. I'm just going to go on a new diet. I'm just going to go on this diet. I'm just going to go on this diet. I'm just going to try this relationship. I'm just going to try that relationship. We think we know what the answer is. We keep doing it over and over again in slightly different ways, telling ourselves it's different, believing that one day reality is just going to give us what we want, when in fact reality has just said, that's not how you're going to get it, because that's not how reality works. So we are all in this trance state from 0 to 7, where we're being imprinted with, this is how reality works. This is how you get what you want. This is what is required for your survival and your growth. That's the human trauma that we're all still dealing with. Because ultimately, what we're going to eventually discover, maybe in 100 years, maybe in 1,000 years, I don't know, is that when each human being connects in with their feelings, connects in with the seeds of who and what they specifically are in this reality, and are allowed to have every part of themselves grown and mature in the light of love. So when we're small children, we're accepted. We get to have our tantrums. We get to spill the milk. We get to do all these things, and rather than being scolded, abandoned, and reprimanded, we're taught. Okay, you just learned something from reality here. You meant to pour the water into the cup and you spilled it on the ground. You just learned something about gravity. I'm going to help you clean it up, and then you can try again. You see what I'm saying here? This is the process of maturation. And then at the same time, we're going to discover that there's no right or wrong, good or bad way to be a human. That every single one of us is a unique expression of God. And when we are allowed to grow the immature parts of ourselves, so every child's going to go through the terrible twos. We're going to hit each other. We're going to get mad at each other. We're going to blame each other. We're going to go through these growth phases. And rather than our parents freaking out or scolding us or telling us blah, 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 we're going to be allowed to learn from reality. You're going to be allowed to hit the other kid, and then you're going to say, how did that make you feel? How does it feel to look at the other child now that's crying that you hit them? We're going to learn how to teach our children how to connect in with their emotions, which are just clusters of feelings, which is just clusters of information about that which is life-generating and that which is life-degrading. There's no judgment. It's just, this is the system, this is against the system, this is with the system. When you work against the system, you destroy yourself. When you work with the system, you generate yourself. Those are the two options. Pain lets us know we're working against the system and degrading ourselves. Pleasure lets us know we're working within the system and building ourselves. It is that simple. So as we start to discover this, we're going to start to discover that there's no scary part, right? And it's great for children to go through their violent phase when they're very small children and can't actually inflict that much harm on others. It's good when they go through that phase when they're 2 and they learn, oh, it doesn't actually make me feel good to make the other child cry, even though I wanted the toy and this is all like very new to me, that I'm not the only one here and that I have to share and all of this. That's what they're learning. It's like, it's an identity crisis. So we allow them to go through that identity crisis. We allow them to feel their way through it. It's a lot of new information. It's stuff they never knew before. It's stuff they never saw before. We guide them through it. And then they naturally don't want to harm other people because it doesn't feel as good to hit someone and get a toy and watch them cry as it does to learn how to cooperate and share. It feels better to learn how to cooperate and share and make a friend while you learn how to share a toy than it does to make an enemy and get the toy. Everyone's going to feel that way because reality will teach us. We are going to start to understand that we don't need shame and blame and victim and all of this to learn. Reality will teach us if we're allowed to feel our emotions, which are clusters of feelings, which feelings are just information packets about life generating, life degrading. There's no judgment. It's not wrong to be life degrading. It's not right to be life generating. It's just a choice you get to make eventually when you learn enough, okay? And the second thing we're going to learn is that I said, each individual being their true self, being allowed to express what they are in this reality will provide something of benefit to the entire community of humans. That will provide something of benefit to the earth, will provide something of benefit to all of life, because when we're being our true, real adult selves, so not what everyone else is, traumatized children, true, real adult self who says, I am a relative individual who's constantly here to grow, change, evolve, and expand, but that is specific. I have very specific traits, interests, desires, things that I'm interested in. And when I'm allowed to express those things, I thrive. And I help the entire life thrive because I am at once an individual who is a part of the reality, a part of everyone. So like me making these videos, this is what I want to be doing with my time. This is what is so interesting to me, what lights me up, what fills me up. And it provides benefit to others, which then provides benefit to me. You see what I'm saying? This is what it looks like to be an adult. You just accept who and what you are. You do that thing that you want to do, and it's always going to be of benefit. And we don't get to make the judgment of whether people are more beneficial or less beneficial or this or that. We're also going to discover this one day. We're all equally beneficial. When we're all just doing our thing, there are going to be garbage men. There are going to be librarians. There are going to be people who actually want to do these things. Taxi drivers. There are going to be doctors. There are going to be neuroscientists. There are going to be spiritual shaman. There's going to be all of these different people. And the world works. There's enough. We're all what we are. Okay? That's reality. But again, the reality that we're living is that most of us, as we're growing up from 0 to 7, we're shamed for who and what we are. We're taught that you can't be that way. We can't be who we are. We can't learn. We get shamed for making mistakes. We get shamed for hurting other people. We get all this trauma of good and bad, right and wrong judgment thrown on us. And we get all of this filter of this is how reality works. You can't be an artist. That's not respectable. You hit children, so you're bad. You climbed up on that and you couldn't get down and you got abandoned, so now you're just completely deeply afraid that you'll never be able to learn or figure anything out by yourself. We get all of this trauma. And that is filter on top of real reality. That's filter on top of who you are and being able to express your true self, which then turns into your shadows, right? So all the parts of you that get rejected, cut off from love, in your childhood. You then learn to cut those parts off from love. And now they are simply parts of yourself that remain immature. You have 2-year-old parts of yourself. You have 3-year-old parts of yourself. So you wonder, why do I keep causing all this chaos in my life? Well, because if you gave a 2-year-old the keys to the car, they're going to crash the car. They don't know how to do it. It's not your adult self driving the ship. When you're in coping, when you're in self-sabotage, when you're in scapegoat, when you're in anything that looks like it's acting in a destructive way, you're simply in a 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old version of yourself that doesn't know how reality works, is trying to get your needs met in the only way that 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old consciousness knows how to get the need met. You binge, you break up, you make the fight, you distract, you deflect, you do drugs, you drink. That's what a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old would do when given these adult tools. This is what's happening. So what is happening when we're on an awakening path? Is we're starting to recognize and wake up to the fact that what we have been taught about reality is incorrect. And so, like I say, when we look at the vibrational scale, and I'm just going to pull it up again to make sure that I have it correctly, because I want to say everything correctly. So the vibrational scale, we start at the bottom with shame and guilt. Grief, fear, so shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger. Okay. So what this is really telling us is, and people say to us that, the lowest state that you can be in is victim mentality. And we have to understand again that as children, we are technically victims. We do not have control over our bodies. We do not have control over our minds. We do not have control over our circumstances. Our parents are our gods. And they are teaching us how reality is. They're teaching us how to think about ourselves. They're teaching us how to think about the world. They're teaching us their judgments, their traumas. And we have no way of knowing whether what they're teaching us is right or wrong, good or bad. Because again, we are feeling it. As children, we all feel it when our parents are telling us something wrong. When we want to express something and we get shut down, it feels terrible. When we want to learn something and we're excited about it and then we get scolded, it feels terrible. Because we have feeling. We always have feeling. And that's why when we're doing these inner trauma work, we're always going back to places where we felt bad and got told a story about that feeling that was incorrect. So we spilled the milk and then we felt guilt and shame instead of feeling, okay, that's just not how that works. Someone can help me clean it up. Then I'm going to learn something new about reality 2 different ways. I'm going to learn something new about cleaning things up. I'm going to learn that learning is okay. I'm going to learn that that's not how pouring works. You see? Love versus fear. So when we're in this victim state as children, we're being taught that our emotions mean there's something wrong with us, mean there's something wrong with reality, instead of, oh no, that feeling of that bad feeling means out of alignment with truth. So we have our feelings, but again, we're getting taught these stories on top of them, and that is our victim nature. So when we're awakening, we're starting to come face to face with the fact that what we have been told is reality, what we have built our entire lives around, what it means to be a good and bad person, what the right thing to do is, what the wrong thing to do is, what the rules are for life. We start to come awake and aware that that's not true. That's breaking the illusion. That's becoming awake. What you were taught about reality isn't real. Okay, whoa. So that's why the bottom line, we're in victim mentality, guilt and shame. The lowest we can feel, because those things are lies. Guilt and shame are always lies. And I've made that video. They are always, 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 always lies. They are always a story on top of reality that has nothing to do with real reality. Then from there comes apathy and grief. That's hopelessness. Okay? So as we're coming out, so we're gonna most of us are living in shame and guilt. We're living in victim mentality, we're living in shame, we're living in guilt. We're living feeling like we're terrible people, we're not enough, we're not good enough, we're not pretty enough, we're not smart enough, we're not thin enough, we're not, in the right relationship, we don't have the right job, we don't have the right career, we don't have the right clothes, we're constantly just feeling like we're shitty. And we can't be who and what we actually want to be. And we're so mad at ourselves that we also can't be what we think we should be. Because again, our real selves are battling with our conditioning. We're constantly sabotaging who we think we should be, or we're having to cope to live the life we think we should live, and we don't know why we're so miserable. Well, it's because it's not your real true self. But at the same time, your nervous system that learned if you're your real self, mom and dad abandon you, caregivers abandon you, therefore provision goes away, therefore you're going to die. So now in your adult life, when you're trying to be your real self, your nervous system is going to shut you down. You're going to get so scared, you're going to get so afraid, you're going to feel so helpless, so hopeless, so like this is not okay. Your coping mechanisms, your self-sabotage, your scapegoats are going to come up even stronger than ever before as your nervous system works to try to push you back into just being what you were told you needed to be, because that's safe. So you're feeling like you're sabotaging yourself either way, because your nervous system doesn't want you to grow into who you really are. Yes? But your real true self doesn't want to stay being your nervous system, doesn't want to stay being the small child. So it keeps putting you in these situations where you're re-traumatized, you're triggered. You keep choosing that partner over and over again. You keep choosing the same job over and over again because you're re-triggering yourself to try to wake yourself up from this nightmare. That it's not something wrong with you. You're living a life that has nothing to do with reality. You keep living your waking nightmare, trying to wake yourself up by triggering yourself. That's what you're doing. We're constantly making these choices that seem like the wrong choices. And we're triggering and traumatizing ourselves. But we're not. We're trying to wake ourselves up. So as we start to move past shame and guilt, say, okay, maybe I shouldn't hate myself. Maybe I don't need to think that there's something wrong with me all the time. Maybe I am actually fundamentally good. And all of this that I've been taught about reality is the thing that's wrong. When we start to open that Pandora's box, apathy and grief are going to be the next things you feel. Because you're now losing your foundation. You're losing, so even though what you had before might have been horribly painful, you had to reject like every part of yourself to live this life that your caregivers and society told you have to live. Seeing who and what you actually want to be just even a little bit being so painful because it's so deeply not what you think is right. And it's so deeply associated with being abandoned, being rejected, not getting your needs met, not getting your community love needs met, right? You're going to get kicked out of the tribe, you're going to get kicked out of the family. That trauma is so deep that it just sends us into this hopelessness place because, of course, to really accept that you're going to have to be your real self and face the ultimate fear that you're going to be rejected, that no one's going to love you, that you're going to be completely abandoned, and that being like the worst thing we can think of as humans. We feel like we're trapped between a rock and a hard place, right? This healing path is going to show us that we are trapped between a rock and a hard place. And the only way through it, to get to the other side, is to learn self-love. And that's why this is the only thing I've ever taught. Because when you can be your own source of love, you then can start to be brave enough to go against your nervous system, to actually start to act and behave as the real you and get rejected by other people, get shamed, get blamed, get all this guilt and shame shit thrown at you. Like what happened when you were a child, you're going to reface all that trauma. And rather than learning to change yourself to fit in, which then makes you need to cope, scapegoat, self-sabotage, it leads you into feeling depressed and anxious all the time. And you're constantly on this high of trying to feel better, the spiritual thing, the new diet, the new distraction, the new carrot on the stick. And then you're sent down back into this depression and you're like this manic depressive person over and over and over again. You start to actually say, okay, no. I'm going to actually embrace who I am. I'm going to love this person. I'm going to let myself get rejected. I'm going to face that fear, be my real self anyways, and then see that, oh, there's actually a whole community of people out there that like the real me. And there's this whole other life out there that I had no idea was there. Because that's the metaphor of We're all in a cage that's two sides, about this tall, and something we could just look up and step over. But we don't see that because we're in 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old perception, which says if I'm rejected, I won't be provided for. I don't know how to provide for myself. I'm 2, I'm 3, I'm 4. I don't know what to do. I'm going to die if I get rejected. If I am my real self, I'm going to die. If I'm not my real self, I'm going to die. So I just feel hopeless and scared all the time. That's that. The next step out of that is desire and anger. Desire is, no, I want something different. I don't want to keep living this life. I am so freaking sick of distracting myself, of getting myself into this position where I think this is going to be different and this is going to be the new thing and this new diet and this new thing, but this isn't it. It's never it. I always think it's different. It's never different. I'm sick of fooling myself. I want something different. From there, you're going to get angry. You're going to get angry at your caregivers. You're going to get angry at society. You're going to get angry at your religion. All that anger that you've been turning in on yourself and turning into shame and guilt for why you should feel bad about you and how all of your problems are your fault, or even the immature anger that doesn't go anywhere, where you get mad at your husband or you get mad at your partner or you get mad at like things that are happening in your current reality, that explosive anger in the car, the rageaholism, you get mad when the waiter doesn't give you the right thing. That's suppressed anger at what you're actually angry at, which is you're angry that you were taught that you can't be yourself, and you were angry that you were taught that you have to shut down your emotional guidance, your feelings, the clusters of information that tell you this is life generating, this isn't, in order to live in this reality where you're accepted, but you're dying inside. That should make you angry, and you're gonna get angry. And now all spiritual people and self-help gurus and all these people who tell you you shouldn't be angry. You need to be the bigger person. You need to be spiritual. Anger is not okay. You need to understand that innocently, these people are traumatized. Anybody who is telling you that your anger is not okay, that it is not okay to be angry, that you have to rush to be the bigger person, that you need to be more understanding and more compassionate and more forgiving, and just forgive and just let it go and just don't be angry. They're traumatized children who don't know how to process their own anger, who got traumatized by the anger of their caregivers that they weren't processing, that they were exploding their anger everywhere. Okay? That is unprocessed trauma telling you not to be angry. That is not spiritual guidance telling you not to be angry. So please hear me when I say this. Your anger is incredibly necessary. Now, how do we healthfully process anger? So it's not about just expressing your anger, okay? And so just to quickly tie this up, this part. If you are not going to allow yourself to be angry, because what that anger is doing, it is like a fire. It is burning away the illusion. So you're in grief and shame. You move out of that into maybe this isn't my fault, which then sends you into apathy and grief, because like, holy fucking shit, if it's not my fault, if I'm not terrible, then that means all these rules that I have for life are wrong. That what my mom and dad taught me about who and what I am and what I need to do and what I need to be aren't true. All of this shit, that's super scary. I don't actually know what reality is. I'm just like completely having the foundations ripped out from under me. This is why I say, like, when you do plant medicine and you do all these things and you have these massive revelations that you can't do anything with, because when you get that all blasted in your face, how much of reality you think is reality isn't reality. It's just going to be completely overwhelming. You're going to get scared. You're going to run away. You're not going to know what to do with it. But then I say it's going to birth desire in you to want something different, and then that's going to promote anger, which is the fire that helps burn away the illusion. That's when you start to see what isn't actually true. And in anger, you're not going to see what is true. You're only going to see what isn't true. And that's incredibly discombobulating. And that's why none of us want to be there. None of us want to go through the anger phase where our foundations are being burned away, but we don't have anything yet to replace it with. That is why we fear anger. And that is why most of us, like I say, fake jump to fake forgiveness, fake being a bigger person, fake spirituality, which is actually just putting yourself back down all the way into victim mode. When you do that, when you act like the bigger person and I'm just going to be nice and I'm just going to blah, 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 but you don't go through the anger phase, you put yourself way back down in victim mentality. You're going to be a pushover. You're going to be a people pleaser. You're going to let people vomit their anger all over you and you're not going to say anything. You're going to find yourself being this nice, lovely, bubbly, safe, happy, positive, I'm always going to see the bright side person who binges, who constantly is in a terrible relationship with people who completely abuse you. And you spiritualize that as it's not abuse and I just need to love them and it's okay. And you tell other people, don't judge them, just love them, right? Just let them vomit all over you. Just let them abuse you. It's not abuse. They're just hurting children and you just need to see them as hurting children. And we're all this forgiving, allowing people to put their cigarettes out on our legs, telling ourselves that's what spirituality is. No, that's martyrdom. And then, like I say, you will be depressed. And but then you may start to find your identity in being a martyr. And you think that you're this really awesome, great, holy person who just lets everybody shit all over you and you're just this unconditional, loving presence, when really you're just letting them abuse you, which is an abuse to themselves. Being a martyr is letting somebody abuse themselves by abusing you. That's all it is. So that's fake spirituality. And then you're going to, like I say, you're going to need to cope. You're going to have all your coping mechanisms. You're going to drink. You're going to overeat. You're going to binge. You're going to purge. You're going to diet. You're going to Netflix. You're going to, like I say, have the terrible, you'll never be able to figure out the career you actually want to do. You're always going to feel unfulfilled. And you're going to become addicted to being this perfect martyr for everybody. And that's going to be your identity. And that's going to be the only way you feel good about yourself. Or you're going to skip down back into hopelessness. You're just going to not face the anger, not face the burning away. And then the only way where to go is down. So you're going to just go back into the sadness, back into the apathy, back into the hopelessness, back into the I don't know what to do, oh my God, this is all so horrible. Then you're going to go back into shame and guilt. And then that might trigger you to remember, oh yeah, no, shame and guilt, that's a lie, okay. Back into sadness, back into grief, back into hopelessness, which then creates desire, and then you get angry again, and you're like, oh, no, don't want to do anger. I don't want to have everything that I know be burned away when I don't actually know what the real answer is. I don't know what to replace it is, right? I'm starting to see these things aren't reality, but I don't know what reality is. I don't know what the right thing is. I don't have anything to replace it yet, so just back down, you see? And that's the spiral, okay? So what do we actually do? What's the answer? You're 40 minutes in. Good job. The actual answer is, obviously, we need to learn to process our anger. Because after anger comes pride, then courage, and then eventually neutrality. So the next steps through anger is, and again, people ask me, how do I healthfully express my anger? It's not about healthfully expressing your anger. It's about healthfully processing your anger. And these two things are very different, okay? Expressing your anger is like eating something that's toxic for you and vomiting. Okay, so the vomiting, good. You got it out. But then, if you just keep eating that thing and then puking and then eating that thing and then puking and then eating that thing and then puking, is that properly processing your anger? Properly processing what's happening here? No. Right? So good, you learn to healthfully express that this thing is bad for you by vomiting it out. But if you don't learn to stop eating the thing, what good is the vomiting? That just becomes a terrible cycle. The vomiting eventually becomes the toxin because vomiting is really hard on the body. And it's a necessary evil when you eat something toxic. But if you're constantly having to throw up every day, that's very, very hard on your body. We're not meant to do that. It's the exact same thing with our anger. What we need to understand is that our anger is trying to show us that we are now, as adults, currently living in ways that are out of alignment with reality that we were taught, and we need to change the way we're living. That's the actual answer to our anger. How do you properly express your anger? You learn what your anger is showing you, that you learned about reality and that you learned about yourself, that you're now currently still living, and you change the way you live. You start to understand who you really are, what reality really is, and you change. So I'm going to give you an example from my life, because I know that always helps, right? So when I first started this, I would be sitting in meditation, and I would start to feel this anger, this rage inside of me at my caregivers, and I would shut it down for a very long time. I did the fake spirituality thing. Be the bigger person, martyr yourself out. I just let my mom and my dad continue to abuse me and treat me terribly and abandon me and other people who were like them. Right? I had bosses and friends, and pretty much everyone in my life mirrored them because I was trying to trigger myself out of my nightmare. And I just had all these super abusive relationships, and I was the martyr. Then eventually I was like, hey, I don't fucking want to be the martyr anymore. This is like really not good. It's not working for anybody. It's hurting me. It's hurting them. And again, I was trying to get out of I was wanting to not be a workaholic anymore. I don't want to be a codependent anymore. I don't want to have all these unhealthy habits in my life. Okay, well then I'm going to have to change the things that are causing me to have to live this way, which is the fact that I'm completely denying myself and I'm not living my true nature. So I started to let myself feel my anger at my mother and at my father and at the church and at society. And for a while, it just meant sitting in meditation and letting myself feel it. Okay, so this is the big thing. You don't need to express it to process it. But that doesn't mean that you don't need to express it at all, right? I definitely ranted to my husband. I had a safe place where I could just be so mad and not mature. Just really not mature. So get a place where you can be immature about your anger. In your journal, get a therapist, somebody somewhere or something. Like I say, journaling or a therapist or a friend who can hold space for you, where you can just vomit it out for the first little while, so you can start to put together the pieces of why this is making you so angry. Because this is the answer, is to start to understand how you're living that's out of alignment with who you are, that's you have been taught is the way you have to live. So like I say, I learned that I'm not allowed to be big, sparkly, telling it like it is, not socially acceptable, making small, like all these things that my mother and my father wanted me to be. I am just like the opposite of that. And basically I was never really able to not be myself, but like I say, I was able to kind of like turn it into this martyrdom thing instead of being my powerful, true self. And so as I started to process my anger, it was like, I want to make videos. I don't want to be small. I don't want to pretend to be humble and like I don't know anything. That's what my mom wanted me to be, but that's not who I am. That's not real. And so I started, like I say, as I really allowed myself to feel my anger, that was the time when it actually started to be processed. Okay, so like, I don't know how else to say it, other than you need to learn how to sit with your anger and not react. Like, let it burn inside of you and validate yourself that you feel angry for a reason. You don't know why right now. You don't understand it. You don't know who you are. You don't know what you were told that isn't correct. You're going to find that stuff out. You need to just sit in the unknown and let it burn. And I think that is something that nobody wants to hear. We don't want to hear. You just sit in it and you let it burn inside of you, and you validate yourself and you love yourself and you accept yourself that you are this angry. And then that decreases the amount that you need validation, that you need to puke it out. The more you validate yourself that it's okay to be angry, and it's okay to not understand why you're angry, and it's okay to not understand what the real reality is and why you feel this way and what the answer is and all that stuff, the more you validate and make it okay and just let it burn inside of you. Journal, burn, journal, burn, journal, burn. You're gonna start to have these little revelations. Oh, I just really don't want to live like this anymore. I just don't want to do this anymore. I just don't want to be like this. I was taught that this is how I had to be, and it doesn't feel right to me. And then you start to see who you actually are going to have to be, that you've always known that you are, right? All these parts of yourself that you tried to get rid of your whole life, that you tried to say were bad and wrong about you, that you thought are your shadow, and all of these things, you're going to start to be like, no, that's my real, true self. That's who I really actually am. And the only way that I'm going to feel happy and good in this life is to be this. Because that's the other thing too, is on the other side of my anger was so much fear that I was just going to turn into an evil person. Like, genuinely, I believed that I was evil. I thought that me being someone who can't make small talk and who sees all the truth about everybody and who wants to live this crazy nomadic spiritual life made me evil, made me selfish, made me wrong, because my parents wanted me to be the prodigal child that goes away and has all these experiences and comes back and says, nope, my parents had it right all along, they love me all along, the way that they live is completely valid, and I'm going to validate their way of life by mirroring it. I'm just going to come back to where they live, I'm going to have kids, we're going to have barbecues, and it's going to be this awesome, happy family life. And I just had these spiritual experiences, and I'm happy and free now, and I can bring that to you in your Western life. And that's not reality. Everything that I've discovered on my path has been I needed to leave, and leave for good, because that way of life doesn't work, especially just not for me. I'm not going to stand up here and say that the Western world is not how everyone should be living. I'm just going to say, for me, it's not. I'm never going back to that. I can't go back to that. So I am fundamentally disappointing what I was supposed to do, what was going to get me love and approval from my caregivers. I'm never going to be that. I'm never going to do it. And all of these things that I do want to be were things that got rejected, got literally completely told to my face, this is bad about you. Don't be like that. You're hurting us. You're a horrible person. Our family would be fine if you could just frickin' shut up. Stop telling us that what we're doing is incorrect. Stop not being able to be okay with the food we're eating. Stop not being able to be okay with the way that we don't ever say anything. Like, it was all of these things. And it eventually just came to this, like, this is who I am. I can't live on Western food. I can't pretend that things are fine when they're not. I don't want to live in a reality where I pretend, where I make nice, where I look normal, where I care about how my hair looks and if I'm wearing the right clothes or my makeup or what people think about me. I don't care, and I just can't. And that was what I was supposed to do, and I couldn't. So the next phases out of this are courage. To own yourself, and then to have the courage to live your life and reface all the trauma that is going to bring up. Because I'm going to just be honest with you. Me embracing myself and living my life the way that I'm living it now has been horrifying the entire time. Like, amazing, miraculous, just serendipitous things happening for me and all these things, yes. Like, living a life I can't even imagine, that I didn't even imagine. And my nervous system was telling me I was going to die the entire time. Like, literally, like, skin peeling off fear, laying in bed paralyzed. Holy shit, my nervous system just, like, flipping out. Telling me, you do this, you're going to get rejected, you're going to die. And so that was the journey. And then eventually, like I say, you get to these higher emotions of joy and understanding and peace and forgiveness. And these are not choices. You do not choose to forgive. I did not choose to forgive my caregivers. Eventually I got to a place where I changed so much that I'm not living how they taught me to live. I'm not their martyr for them. I'm not being the bigger person and just accepting them for who they are. I have changed my life so much for myself. I have aligned myself so much now, grown up so much that I'm not living for their approval anymore. I've brought my nervous system out of that trauma through continually facing, being my real self and loving myself anyways. Like I say, facing that, maybe I'm evil. Maybe I'm just horrible. Maybe I'm everything my parents told me that I was. Just awful, horrible, useless, terrible, selfish, too loud, too big, too much. Okay. I embraced it. I said okay. And now I can see that nothing about me is terrible. But I embraced it. I changed my life enough that I no longer live in their paradigm. And that's where forgiveness comes in. I'm not martyring myself out for my parents anymore. I'm not angry and forgiving them and seeing them as the traumatized children that they are with a level of separation as a choice. That happened as I separated myself and became the person, lived the life that's in alignment with reality. So now I can be in the state of forgiveness because I'm not susceptible to living how they taught me to live. The anger that you feel is going to be there until you change enough that you're not living the life that makes you angry, that you're not doing the things that they are telling you to do. You're not being fake spiritual martyr. You're not being hopeless, continuing to live the life that they taught you to live, knowing it's not real, but not doing something different. You get to these levels of, I am so different. I am living my truth so much that I am no longer susceptible to their paradigm. I don't participate in it. It can't get on me. And now I forgive them. I see them as the traumatized children that they are, because I'm not susceptible to being pulled back into it. That's the natural state of forgiveness. I see where you're at. I totally get it. It's not your fault. My parents are not bad people. My mother is not a bad person. She's a lovely person who's traumatized and hurting. But I had to get angry with her, and I had to change my life enough that I wasn't living by any of the rules that she taught me before I got into a state of forgiveness for her. Now I can forgive her, but it's not a choice. It's a state that I'm in because I let myself become my real self. I don't live by her rules anymore. I'm not destroying myself to get her approval anymore. And that's why I can see her the way that I see her. It's like that. Enlightenment is that and then you start to understand that everything is the way that it should be, like I talked about in 2 videos ago. Life is operating exactly how it should. I'm a conscious co-creator. Who am I as an individual who's never going to know everything, but there's so many things that are relevant to me to know that I can start to learn forever. I'm going to be creating forever. I'm never going to get it done. I'm never going to know everything, but I know how to learn. I know how to access my feelings, which tell me pleasure, pain, which then give me an awareness of reality, not reality. Create this, and I want to create this within reality. I want to create this within reality. I don't want to create that. I don't want to go there. I don't want to do that. That's not relevant to me. Feels good, doesn't feel good. With this overarching bliss feeling that doesn't have anything to do with whether I'm life generating or life degrading, because overarchingly, I'm learning. And that's the one thing that feels good. I'm in alignment, ultimately, always, because I'm learning. No matter if I'm degrading myself or building myself, I'm learning. And that's enlightenment. So you're just going along. In an enlightened life, you're going to break stuff, you're going to build stuff, all of it's good. There's no more judgment. So that's how we get out of that. Embrace the anger, let it burn, let it destroy your foundations, realize it's going to send you into a place of not knowing what the truth is and having to let go of what you had before you're going to see the truth. So in the next video, we're going to talk about how to do this with the nervous system. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave those down below. Join the mystery school. I have lots of processes for this in the mystery school. We're diving deep, so that's in there. And that's all. I hope that this video helped, and I love you so much. I'll see you in the next video. Mwah!